In this video, we're going to talk about how to take the graph of a function and use that graph to figure out what the graph of the inverse of that function would be like. And specifically here in blue, we have the graph of f of x. And you can see that this is just really kind of like a piecewise function. It's like we've pieced together two different lines with varying slopes. And what we want to do is we want to use this to find the graph, like I said, of the inverse. And so to be able to do this, what we need to do, since we aren't given an actual function or a piecewise function or anything like that, all we have to go on is the picture. What we need to do is we need to look at some of our properties of functions and their inverses and how they relate to each other. And so the main thing that we're going to take advantage of is that the domain of the original function f is going to be the range of our inverse function, and the range of the original function is going to be the domain of the inverse function. So they kind of switch. So the idea here is that the x and y values are going to switch between your original function and your inverse function. And so keeping in mind that we're just going to be switching the x and y values, what we're going to do is we're going to take the three dots you see right here, the 3 points on our graph of f, and we're going to figure out what those ordered pairs are, and then we're going to switch the x and y values, so basically just flip the numbers from one position to the other, and then those are going to give us new points or new ordered pairs, which are going to be ordered pairs that we use to plot in green and connect the dots to find the inverse function. So in general, that's how if you're given a picture, you can switch it from the original to the inverse. You just figure out some ordered pairs and you switch your x and y values and then replot the points. So let's go ahead and look at here. Our first point going from left to right is going to be the point -1, 0 in the original function. And the second point going from left to right is going to be 0, 2. So this again, everything in blue is going to be the original function. And then the third point and final point going from left to right is going to be 4, 3. And basically what you could do is if you had to reproduce this, you could just plot those 3 points and connect the dots. And now what we're going to do is we're going to switch these around. Where this is, like I said, the original f of x. But what we're going to do now is we're going to switch the x and y values, and that's going to transform these points, or these ordered pairs, into points that are going to be on the graph of the inverse function. And so f inverse of x. And so -1, 0 is going to become 0, -1. 0, 2 is going to become 2, 0. Again, just switching those numbers around. And 4, 3 is going to become 3, 4. And so now we have a point that is going to correspond with each of the points that we had for the original function f, but these are going to be for the inverse. So now we're just going to plot these points. So if we plot the point 0, -1, that's going to be right here. If we plot the point 2, 0, that's going to be right here. And if we plot the point 3, 4, that's going to be right there. And we're just going to connect these dots because we know it's going to be similar to what the other one is. And there you are. What you have in green is now going to be the graph of the inverse, f inverse of x. Now notice we didn't have the function, all we did was use the picture. So take your points from the original, switch the x and y, plot those points and connect the dots. Another thing to look at, that's just the procedure, but look at our answer. If you kind of look at it carefully, notice that these two graphs are a mirror image over that diagonal line y equals x. So basically another way you could have done this problem, if you were careful with it, is you could have taken the original blue, you could have drawn that dotted line, and you could have reflected everything over that dotted line. And that's always going to be true for problems like this when you're wanting to graph the inverse, or if you're given the inverse and want to graph the original function. You can either take the ordered pairs and switch them like we did, or you can just be really careful and reflect things over that line.